here, and I don't know if we're live. It says live on YouTube, and I think I see it over there. There, let me just click. Forgive all the folks if this is live. We're just, all right, we have New York for Life 12 first. I see us live. Okay, we're live. First time doing Zoom. Before we begin, I just want to say to Google, you guys suck. Every time you try to improve something, you just make it worse. I want that on the record.
Live on YouTube,
So,
and I think I see it.
One little technical difficulty. Okay, there. That now we should be good. Okay, so hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and I promised a special live stream this afternoon. It's about 40 minutes late, but we're going to do it anyway. We have an interview with Taha Abbasi. That's correct, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, okay. Hopefully everyone can hear that. See, it's so well. I'm going to assume people can hear it. If you guys cannot hear him, let me know in the comments. I'm just going to have to assume. So anyway, Taha, before we begin, well, first of all, thank you for joining us for this interview. As you can see, I've got some questions. Oh, but I can't hear you now. That's the problem.
I see.
You hold on, folks. Give me one more second to. Let me do one more thing. New technology, I swear. So, oh, okay. All right. Can you say something real quick?
Yeah. Hello. Testing.
Okay. We're good. We're good now. I believe we're good. So, okay. So, before we begin, thank you for joining us for this interview.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Kevin. Absolutely.
Oh, you're welcome. So, we're going to have an interview about Tryp. Just to let everyone know, the mere virtue of the fact that I'm doing this interview does not necessarily mean I support, nor do I condemn Tryp. We are here to ask some questions, get some information. I will try to withhold any editorializing until future videos. I'm going to pretty much let him speak for the most part. I may press on certain questions, but we're here just to get information for you guys at home to come up to your own conclusions. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. Hopefully sounds good to everyone else too. Yep.
All right, excellent. So first three questions are pretty basic, but we'll give people a chance to come here. But, in just a few sentences, what is Tryp?
It's a question, if you ask anybody, they're going to answer in their own perspective. And in my view, and one of the main reasons I came on board Tryp back on 1st of March was because I see Tryp as a company that can be different, that can be built by drivers for drivers. And it's a company that can be built in a way how our country is built by the people for the people. But I think it's a right, in plain terms for people who don't know, it's a ride sharing company which allows passengers to request a ride from drivers that might be available and active around in that area, and they can use that service to go from one point to the other at a reasonable price, and hopefully drivers make a lot more money. But we can get into a lot more of perhaps what makes us different and things like that.
Yeah, we'll be getting into other things, because my follow-up question is, what are the advantages of Tryp to a driver in, let's say, roughly 5 sentences? If you were to sell the advantages of Tryp to a driver, what would your sales pitch be?
My sales pitch to drivers, and this, we'll get into the history a little bit later, but keeping it to 5 sentences, my approach to building Tryp, I'm, by the way, just to introduce myself, I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the company. My name is Taha, Abbasi. So as of March 1st onwards, anything that's built in Tryp goes through me. And so the way my pitch to drivers is, think of Tryp as a software development team for you guys. I actually am a person who believes in you can't build something for somebody until you've experienced what their pains are, which is why I went out before the moment I applied for the job at Tryp back in January. Actually, it was a long process. I immediately, after I understood I was going to likely get through the interview process, I went and started driving full time for 2.5 months. And we can talk about that later, in a much greater experiment to understand the problems that drivers face. And what I realized there is there's tremendous insight as to what drivers tell us are their problems with their
okay, well,
different
let me slow you down a little bit. This interview is for the average person. Like, the history might be interesting, but let's focus on like the core thing. Like, if you were like to say like there's Uber, there's Lyft, why drive for Tryp over Uber and Lyft in simple terms? Your answer.
Yeah, I think it's a choice that drivers make. Our simple pitch is we give you 100% of the ride fare. We build technology based on your feedback instead of just pushing features out, like what happened with Google right now. And then people are, what do I do with this? Right? I remember when I was driving, all of a sudden passengers would come in, and they would start complaining, why do I have to walk when Express Pool came off, for example? Passengers didn't know what Express Pool was. So for us, our approach is doing it a little bit different and working with drivers and riders and putting features out that way. So one, you can make more money. Second, you'll be cared about because we will do our best always to continue to work with you and build features and technology with your insight.
All right. Now then, this is a question that actually I don't think is asked very often, although it should be asked quite often. You're a passenger. Why should they use Tryp over Uber and Lyft, assuming, because from doing this for years, I can tell passengers typically don't care whether the driver's getting paid. So what is their reason to use Tryp over Uber and Lyft?
Yeah, I think so. When we launched in Miami, I actually talked about this. There's sort of this animosity that's created between drivers and riders, in my opinion and experience in the industry overall. Our approach is if you provide a driver value, if you treat them with respect, if you listen to them and they're happy and they're making good money, they will treat passengers better. And that's our approach. For example, one of the things drivers really complain about is not having driver caps, just flooding the market with drivers, and that reduces rates. If they're making more money, working less hours, they're going to be happier people, and they're going to treat passengers, their customers, in a much better way. So that's one of our reasons why we believe this might be a better approach. And the second is that we give drivers the ability to make their own set of customers. They can actually, through our app, create a book of business, so to say, and create their own business within our application to have repeat customers. That's our favorite driver feature that we thought will be really cool again. But if our drivers think it's not cool, we'll replace it with something else that they might want to put into place.
So let me get this straight. You actually have a feature in there that Uber and Lyft drivers have been asking for a long time, which is to have like a favorite passenger and a favorite driver. That's actually going to be in the Tryp app.
Yeah, so right now, again, when I say features, I'm glad you asked the question. I always want to clarify what's in the app now and how the rollout happens. Being a startup, just because I say something is there doesn't mean it's in the app right now. In the app right now, what we have is passengers can actually favor the driver. So if you, like, for example, I'm in Orange County right now. If I took a ride with a Tryp driver, if Tryp was active here, I could favor that driver. So when we do launch the favorite driver request feature, which is down the road in about 45 to 90 days right now on our roadmap, you'd be able to see a list of all drivers you favorited and request a ride specifically for them. Imagine in a local city area, that will be so powerful because you can actually create recurring customers and understand I can just go out, work 8 to 12 in the morning, and I have these 20 customers I'm always going to give a ride to, and that's my income. So it gives some cool options.
Right. Well, that is definitely a feature that I know Uber and Lyft drivers want, and I know passengers want that too. So now you said something interesting about the driver cap. So you're actually going to have vehicle caps on the road. How's that going to look like?
So we haven't decided on that yet, but one of the things that we started finding out is because our approach obviously is we have a chicken and egg problem, right? You have to get drivers so that riders will actually request rides, but then you have to get riders so drivers can make money. And you really have to solve the problem one way or the other. We went down by getting drivers first and saying, hey, drivers, come on board so that we can go on and get passengers. So what happens now is that in terms of a rider requesting that specific ride, or in a certain area going out and requesting a service, the way we solve this problem for drivers to make money is we're doing event-based launches in different markets. Instead of just opening it up in Miami, we did a big launch, as you know, in Miami. And then there was a lot of confusion as to why isn't Tryp on 24/7? We are not on 24/7 in Miami. We are not on 24/7 anywhere, in fact. We're doing a rollout similar to what Uber and Lyft did when they went out. It just, you didn't know about it because it was so early back in the day. It Uber launched only with a black car service, so he just didn't know about what was happening. But now everything's amplified.
Okay. Well, since you bring that up, that actually is one of my questions that I have to ask, because a big deal was made about the fact that Tryp launched in Miami, Florida. However, from everything I've read, there's like, well, maybe first of all, you can you can just answer this question in like one sentence. How many rides have drivers given on the Tryp platform since launch?
We did the first drive, which Bob McNulty, our CEO, actually did for some of the folks that were working really hard to help build Tryp at that time. So it was Bob actually did the first drive, and then we had 2 drivers that same day that did the first drive as well. And that was one of them took David Mata, and the other passenger took one of our company folks. That is the only drives that have happened. So if someone's claiming that there's been drives, there has not. We actually announced at that event, we're not going to turn the app on 24/7, because what happens when you turn the app on, we have to start charging drivers a subscription fee, and we don't want to do that now.
So it's not live to the public yet.
Right. It's similar to if you look at, you've heard about Nomad Rides or something like that.
Yes,
the company.
I have.
So they also have hours in the day that they're online, and we're doing the similar approach. We're going to partner with different events, for example, and we're going to launch those events and tell drivers, go here. And during that time, when we're building demand, we're not charging drivers any money. We're not charging them any subscription, any setup fee, because until we know we can give them enough riders, we are not going to charge any money. That's something that was real important to me.
Oh, okay. Well, then I hope you can clarify this then. Some viewers actually asked that I ask this if the opportunity came up. And the question that someone asked is, why is Lyft calling this a launch then, as opposed to a beta? Because it's really a beta. It hasn't launched, it hasn't gone live, but why use the term that suggests that it has launched?
Well, that's a great question. You can call it beta. I mean, it's if you want to call it a beta launch, we can call it a beta launch. The reason I tell you our reasoning.
Well, I'm asking why you guys are calling it that.
Absolutely. So the reason you understand, we solved the problem of getting drivers in the market. If you open the Uber app, you can see drivers for Uber in that market, for Lyft. Now, if you open the Tryp app in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale market, you can see tons of drivers available. But to solve the rider problem, you actually have to announce that you've launched out and you're giving away free rides. So what we're doing is at different events, we're giving away promo codes, and you can't do that if you're in beta. I mean, you could, but again, it's kind of like, well, if you're in beta, should I even try you out? So to help drivers is why we went out and spent all the money to say, hey, we are actually launched, and we're continuing to actually spend our own money to fund these rides, where we'll give a promo code, riders will get free rides at different events, and drivers will still get paid for that. It's just we're paying for those initial rides to bring traction and to show riders how awesome of an experience Tryp drivers can provide, because they're happier, they're getting paid more, so on and so forth.
Oh, okay. So just to clarify, Tryp considers officially to be launched when you're testing it out and you're giving a few rides. They're controlled rides, mind you, but there are a few rides, but you're not charging people, and that constitutes as the definition of a launch for Tryp.
In our opinion, that was a smart decision to call it that, to do a launch with a staged rollout. Again, we're not here to get hung up on wording. If we made a mistake with that, if you guys think we should change the name, we'll change the name. We're not about our ego at all. We're not about, and this is part of, I apologize, I didn't come on board with your channel before or with other people before. I think we did a horrible job of communicating who we really are. I'm a guy whose priority here was to be driver first. And I want to get all the sort of BS or anything that kind of gets in the way of that away from this. And if there's something we screwed up, I'll own up to it. It's like, hey, if you guys think calling this a launch was a mistake, I'll go change that. You know, that's the kind of person I am. That's the kind of company I hope to build here together with my partners. Because again, our focus should be on how do we provide great value to drivers.
Well, I'll let the viewers decide whether or not the wording was a mistake. My goal here is just to get what your definition is, which you've answered the question. You've answered that question, so you know I'm personally satisfied. Now the next question, and this is probably the most important question, I would say, for many drivers. What are the rates going to be for the drivers, and what will they be based on?
Okay, so what we actually did is, in order to keep this competitive, and again, we're not going to get this right the first time. We're not going to get this right the second time, but we're going to continue to improve on this with the help of our drivers. When we set rates in a market, we don't do it just by us thinking, hey, let's go and set this rate. Because of the approach I said, we work with drivers to figure out, is this reasonable? So to keep competitive rates, and would you mind if I just share my screen? I actually have our rate sheet. Is that okay?
If you can do that, yes.
Yeah, it'll take just a second. I actually have it up here. It's going to be a lot of numbers, and this is fine, but you're going to see something raw here, which is completely fine. I'm going to show you guys some stuff here. So down below, I'll scroll down. Let me know, Kevin, if this is too small or is this legible?
That looks, I think that looks fine.
Okay, so these rates right here are actually Lyft's rates that are listed on Lyft's own website and under the fare estimator. These are the different types of fees that they charge. On the right side, these are the rider rates in column C, and column F is where you see their driver rates are. And actually, you brought up a good point when you made the video where you said Tryp lied. They're not giving 100% ride fare. What we came up with, and we may be wrong how we're structuring this. Again, we're not about our ego. We're about fixing problems and really getting things out to the driver. So if you look at where Lyft and Uber take 25% of the fare, they only take that straight out from the base cost of a fare. They also take it out from the per mile and per minute cost. If you notice over here, exactly 25% they take it out according to what they've listed in their driver app and what they've listed in their rider app. We took these same rates and we matched almost all of them for the driver, because here's the important part that's for you to remember and for everybody to remember. For Lyft and Uber, there are two sets of rates. One is a set of rate that's for riders, and the other is a set of rate per minute and per mile for the drivers. And there's a difference between the two. For Tryp, there's only one rate. The per minute and per mile rate that we showed riders is the same rate that we showed drivers. The only difference is we have to account for certain things that Uber and Lyft don't have to account for. For example, there is credit card processing fee. Because Uber takes such a large percentage, someone has to pay that. If we're not taking any money out of it, then who's going to pay that? So what we decided, you know what, we should add that into the ride fare, and the rider should pay that. It may not be the correct answer, but that's what we're doing first off. We do charge a booking fee, and I apologize that it was not communicated clearly enough. I saw in your channel as well. I actually went back and saw if we have listed it somewhere in the past. And we have some Medium articles from back in January where we have listed it, but you're right, our website does not make it clear enough, and I've noted that down after watching your video, and we're going to improve that. We're going to make that change. So thank you for pointing that out. But our booking fee is $1.95 flat on each car type, and that will always be there. And you brought up a point, it can change. It possibly can change. I'm not going to come here and lie to you that it won't change, but we will never take that out of the ride fare. The only reason that might change is, let's say we have 15 million rides happening per day, and the API calls, you have to pay Google Maps to use API calls. If that cost goes up, we may need to do something over there, but we will do that together with the drivers. You're not going to just come and say that, hey, we're going to start taking a larger percentage of your ride fare. What we consider ride fare to be, what we think also Lyft and Uber consider ride fare to be, is a per minute and per mile rate. Okay. I'm going to show you some calculations here. If you're okay, if you want to give me another minute, I can show you some calculations of the comparison between Lyft and Uber. So we actually took Lyft's example in Fort Lauderdale and Miami area because Lyft was a little bit cheaper for riders. And we wanted to see if we took the same distance per minute per mile rate, and they charge a time base, they add the base fee, they add the booking fee and the service fee, all that. If we compare it to our app, where do we stand? In most cases, we were about, on average, 5 to 8% cheaper. Sometimes we were about the same price for the rider. But for the driver, we almost always were giving a bit more money. On average, net, just on the per minute and per mile, minimum, they were making 22% more, not counting the cancellation fee and the wait time and other things that they talk about. You can make up to 40% more, but I wanted to be really conservative. Net, you would make 22% more. Again, this is our first iteration, which means we probably got a lot of stuff wrong here. But if you talk to all the drivers in Florida, if you talk to the drivers in South Florida, I personally went down to Florida and talked to a lot of the folks and worked with them to come up with these rates. And that's what I want to do in each market. I don't want to just say, here's the new rates for Florida, here's the new rates for Philadelphia or California. That's never going to happen with us. It's going to be, hey guys, this is what the market's looking like. What do you guys think? Perhaps we should have driver councils in different areas. What do you guys think we should do to stay competitive?
Oh, okay. So that's oh, there it goes again. So that clears some things up, not everything. So let me use like an example here, because
Sure.
I mean, in your it actually shows in your spreadsheet, like in at least one city, Lyft is charging 35 cents a mile for their distance, and I think most people would agree that's too low. My question is, knowing that market Lyft charges 35 cents per mile, would Tryp also charge 35 cents a mile, and the drivers would make more money by virtue that Tryp doesn't take any of the fare, just the booking fee? Or would Tryp maybe cost 40 cents a mile? Like could you kind of explain what the thought process would be like? Are you going to try to keep the rates comparable to Uber and Lyft, and the drivers just get more because they're not having to pay the fee, or is it going to be different in some substantial way?
Yeah, so we don't have a clear answer to that. We have an approach of how we get to an answer to that, and that's what I can share with you. Because if I say we have all the answers, then I'll be lying. So our
Right.
approach is that I mentioned that on average they're about 5 to 8% cheaper. The reason being, if you take Lyft and Uber's per minute, per mile rate, their booking fee, their service fee, and everything they list that they're supposedly charging riders, and I have some of my top engineers working on these algorithms. When you add that up for the per minute, for the number of miles and minutes, there's almost always a gap of $2 to $3 that we don't know where that's going. We know they're not paying that to drivers.
No,
It's just going. It's just going somewhere. So we know that we have that competitive advantage because we're not in that business of taking the ride fare element of it. So we can actually have room to give drivers more money by charging slightly more than the per minute and per mile rate, or we can choose to incentivize riders saying, hey, this is actually cheaper than all the other platforms, and come on and take a ride over here. So we don't know the exact answer to that. We'll probably experiment a bit, and we'll probably figure that out together with drivers and rider feedback. Nature of a startup, we're going to go through a lot of iteration to get the right answer there.
Okay. One more thing I would like to ask on the rates thing, and then we'll move on to
sure.
next couple things. You're very honest about how the why am I forgetting the term, the booking fee. You are very honest that could go up and it could go down, and you're going to work with drivers, and that's admirable. And by the way, thank you for considering being upfront about it on the website. That's really what made me upset. My question is, when you decide it's time to alter that booking fee, how are you going to incorporate the drivers in that conversation? Is it going to be like you're going to put a notification in the app that says we have to go up to this, and you can either accept it or you can't drive? What if people like don't agree to the terms? Like, how does the negotiations go at that point when they say, well, I don't want you to raise the booking fee because it might affect the tip? I don't know, whatever the reason would be. How do you intend to have a dialogue with the drivers without forcing them to agree to it or not drive?
Yeah, so first of all, we wouldn't come. Our approach is and has been since I came on board, that and this is something that the leadership, I'm sure you've met Bob in the past as well, and David, they've wanted this. So it was a good conjunction that our team works in this way now. We would have had those discussions with drivers first. I'm in the process right now of creating driver councils in different areas. So I'm trying to get into Facebook groups and just ask people what their problems are, have a senior driver who's done tons of drives, have a new driver come in and give us feedback. And that's how we decide and discuss problems that we actually face and solve them. But to solve this, we're coming up with a different idea as well. Have you ever hosted a room on Airbnb or signed up as a host on Airbnb?
No, not yet.
On Airbnb, if you sign up as a host, Airbnb shows you what the prices of rooms in that area should be, or houses in the area should be, based on market demand, which is basically what Uber, Lyft do based on the demand of that area. They show you what the price should be. But then Airbnb says, what do you want to set your price at? So you can choose to take their suggestion, or you can choose to set, a lot of people in the beginning, because they don't have reviews, they set a lower price to get reviews. And as they become a super host, they tend to charge a bit more. So we're thinking that because we don't want to be in the business of telling drivers what to do, we just want to be a software provider like a Netflix to drivers or a Google G Suite to drivers. We're going to potentially give drivers the option to set their own rates as well. Again, that's not something in play right now. It's very complex to build that out and to even understand how we're going to show that to riders to be able to choose that. But even if they don't want to agree to us, we're going to give them an option to say, hey, you can set your own rate. And if you feel you've built up a brand and have enough value, your customers will pay you what they feel your value is that you provide to them. Maybe you keep water bottles in your car. Maybe you provide snacks and things of that sort. So that's what we think would be a good approach. And that's what we found in conversation with some drivers would be a good approach. But we'll continue to work on it in this manner, working together with drivers.
Okay, excellent. Now we're going to get to two questions that I think are relatively easy to answer, and then we're going to get to another big one that actually has been brought up several times in the chat room. I am kind of paying attention to you guys, don't worry. Will Tryp have a rating system, and how will that work?
Again, that was something extremely important to me, and I wouldn't have learned about this if I hadn't gone driving. So if you're okay, I just want to take 2 minutes because this is super important.
Sure. Take 2 minutes.
Thank you. So when I first started driving and I applied for this job, as I mentioned, to be the chief technology officer at Tryp, I wanted to know what it was like to be a driver, what problems you were facing. So I went out and I left Smyrna, Delaware, which is where I used to live. Philadelphia was the closest major city. I made a decision I was going to full-time be a driver, cut off all my earnings, and make all of my money from being a driver. I lived in a hostel for $20 a night. There's a travel hostel there. That's how I figured out what a driver's livelihood is like. Probably extreme, but for me, it taught me a lot. After 3 days of doing that, I got a message from Uber saying a rider has rated me 1 star. My account is at the risk of deactivation because it's pretty new, because they had an extreme facial allergic reaction to a pet in my car. I drove for 2.5 months, never had a pet in my car. I would have gladly given a ride to a service animal because it's required by the law too. Never had a service animal. I was too new to realize that I'd actually been scammed. It was a rider scam that apparently is pretty common. People give you 1 star to get a free ride. And then another instance happened later. And there's instances where people rate you 1 star because they don't like the color of your car. So what are we doing about it? That's something that really made me upset because I worked really hard and I was like, wow, riders don't realize you're actually taking away someone's livelihood by rating them 1 stars. So what we're doing is if you rate somebody 3 stars or less, if you rate your drivers 3 stars or less, 1, you are required to provide a description of why you're doing that. Number 2, we've got 2 sets of ratings. One is your profile weighted profile rating, which is how we determine how you're doing in our ecosystem. But that 3 stars or less rating does not automatically go there. It comes to us, we review it. And if it's something like, oh, I didn't like the color of Kevin's car, we are not going to put that on your profile. We can't get rid of it because that's illegal. It's review tampering. We will hold it in your profile, but it would not be against your weighted rating system. And it goes both ways. That is our solution right now. We feel it's pretty solid. But again, like anything else, we'll continue to get feedback and see if we can make that even better.
Oh, okay, excellent. So now then, as a follow-up, you probably know what the follow-up question is at this point, but how will the deactivation policy work?
So for us, it's actually really tricky. We battle with this about not intervening with drivers. We want to actually not be in a position where we deactivate drivers. We want to be in a position where we're a software provider and we do not actually deactivate drivers unless you've actually committed some serious crime. Instead, we want the market to decide. So if you're getting a lot of bad reviews, we will likely just show the user, hey, these are folks that have good ratings. These are folks that have bad ratings. Who do you want to go with? And the market will then weed out, drivers that might not be rated best, might not have the best service. Again, that's our policy right now. May not be the best policy, but I think that puts us in a position of not deciding who stays on the platform and who doesn't, as long as we're doing a good job of monitoring reviews and making sure people follow the law and are safe. And we are not really going to be deactivating folks. We're just going to show what their rating is and let the market decide whether they want to go with someone who's rated 1 stars or 2 stars.
Okay, excellent. Now here's the next big question that the viewers have been actually. Don't worry, guys. I had it on here. It was technically number 8 and 11. What insurance is Tryp going to be using for the drivers?
So this is obviously a TNC requirement. We have the minimum TNC required insurance that's listed on our website about what kind of coverages you get. The insurance happens to be different. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you've driven with Uber and Lyft in different areas. In Philadelphia, it's Farmers. In Delaware, I believe, is a State Farm. There's different vendors in different areas. So we happen to have a national provider. And all of this stuff is not in the application right now, which I think you pointed out or someone else pointed out, and that is my fault. We're going to go ahead and make sure we put all the information relevant to your area in the application. So you can go, just like in Uber, you go to your driver profile, you click help, and you click which insurance provider covers your specific area. So it's a set of providers. We are working with a national one as well, so we don't have to do different providers in different areas, but there's a set of providers that cover the areas where we're launching. But the coverage details are listed on our website. And again, I listened to your video. It's not clear enough. It's not visible enough. I'm going to work on making that better.
Okay. And is there going to be a way that the drivers and riders, for that matter, can see what the insurance providers are or all these things without signing up to be a driver?
Yeah, no, they should be able to. That's what I mean by I listen to your videos. It's absolutely ridiculous that you can't see this information without signing up. And to be honest with you, we did such a horrible job of this. You can actually see this without signing up in terms of what kind of insurance you get, but people just can't get to it. It took me 15 minutes to find it myself. So that tells you that we have a lot of work to do, and I will own up to that mistake and we will go and fix that. Probably within the next 2 weeks, we're going to make some massive changes to our information section, and we'll continue to improve that. We screwed up. There's no denying it, and we're going to fix that. And Thank you for pointing it out.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, could you possibly clue us in? I know you say it's going to be different for each area, but could you kind of give us a little hint on what the average deductible is going to be?
I believe that the deductible that we have right now on average is about $1,000 for different areas. I know Lyft has a policy where there's no deductible. That tends to be pretty expensive. I don't know if we're going to be able to manage that right now. I'm not going to lie to drivers. It likely will be $1,000 deductible in the beginning, and it potentially could get better, but that comes with scale. When you have tons of money to burn and you have tons of money to invest in these areas, we're not there yet. So that's likely what our policy is going to be in the beginning.
Okay, well, I actually believe that Lyft's deductible is $500. It used to be significantly higher. Now, do drivers need to worry about getting things like a business license, their own insurance, etc., before they drive for Tryp?
So business license, a lot of this comes down to your own preference. If the law requires you to have a business license, you should. If the law doesn't require you in your state, because it varies state to state. In Florida, you do not need one. In Florida, you don't even need to go through an inspection, right? So now in terms of rideshare insurance, we always recommend that you insure yourself appropriately. Our insurance covers you when it's just like Lyft and Uber's insurance. We have a T&C minimum required insurance. So your insurance kicks in first, and if your insurance doesn't cover you, we cover the rest. That's typical of all the other areas, and it's actually surprising we're able to manage that considering we're not taking 25% of the ride fare. But it's something that we thought, and we're going to continue to improve that as well. So I do recommend that you get the appropriate insurance coverage and you get the appropriate licenses that the law requires, but you don't have to go. We don't require you to go out and get that stuff.
Oh, okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Now, we've got a few more questions.
Sure.
I was debating whether or not to ask these next two questions, but I've kind of been
shoot them over my way. No worries.
I've been okay because I've been paying attention to the chat, and I think it actually might be good to address this, even though it's going to cause some YouTube drama. I know. So the first of this two-part question is a simple yes or no answer. Just yes or no. Are you aware of a YouTuber called No More Ever 925, otherwise known
Greg?
as
Yes.
Greg? Okay.
Yep, I know who Greg is.
You're aware.
I'll let you ask the next question. Sorry, you said
Okay.
It was yes or no.
Here's the yeah, that was a yes or no question. Here's the next question. He has made comments to the extent that drivers who don't support Tryp are stupid. People who are cautious are idiots. And he has indirectly suggested that those who do not join the Tryp revolution are lazy and unmotivated. And here's the thing. He is the person who pops up the most when you search Tryp in the YouTube search bar. So I would like to know, what is Tryp's stance on him and these comments?
I should have started the call with this. I first want to apologize to you. I actually watched some of the videos and heard some of the things that were said, and I take responsibility for not watching this stuff early enough. If you follow some of the stuff that I do, which I'm going to start publicly broadcasting, I work 22 hours a day. I only got an hour and a half of sleep last night, but that's not an excuse. It still comes down to, I'm sorry that I failed you. I failed the other Uber tubers, and I failed even Tryp as a company for not catching stuff like this before, because it should have been pinned in the butt right when it started. Disrespectful behavior is not tolerated. And I was actually on a live stream with the rideshare professor when this became extremely evident. During that live stream, I asked my team, I didn't realize Greg at that time was actually at our Go Center, which is our kind of like Uber Greenlight Hub. It's a Tryp Greenlight Hub in Miami. And he was out there, he was streaming, and I requested, hey, please ask him to go offline and have him get on a Zoom call with me. But what am I going to do about it? I'd like to talk about that a little bit, and hopefully that shows you about my character and Tryp's character. I've talked to the guy for 5 minutes once before this, and my interaction at that time was just like any other person. What do you know about somebody in a 5-minute conversation? But I have enough evidence now to say, you know, there's probably something that needs to be done. I know there's some things he said specifically about you and about a Mark from Uber Hints. I had a call with him and I said, hey man, you know, as a person, this is not good to say these things. And you know that these things are not appropriate to talk about. And I had a detailed conversation. My team was on that. You need to start taking these videos down. You need to change, you need to stop trolling other channels. You need to change your approach to be more positive. And if you don't comply with that, your account will be deactivated. And that's our policy. But instead of deactivating right off the bat, because it is my first interaction, I wanted to show the rideshare professor while we were on the call. I took action. I made him come off stream, and then I went on a call right away. And now I want to give him a chance to see if he is going to comply. If he doesn't, then yes, we are going to deactivate. I do hope that by the end of this, it turns out that we can actually get along and we can actually focus on drivers, because that's what it's all about, not about fighting with each other. And I'm sorry that that happened. I'm going to continue to monitor Greg's channel, and he is, from my conversation, what I hear, he is a good guy. He just let his passion get ahead of him and did some bad things, right? Said some bad things, and that needs to be fixed. I hope that's fair. I hope you can, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a fair approach?
I would personally not want him to be deactivated unless it was absolutely necessary. I just don't believe in deactivation except for as a last resort thing. And I mean, I consider him to be very spirited and passionate. He has not said anything that has personally offended me so much, but he does rub people the wrong way and has gotten personal. So I was just wondering what your stance on it was.
I've had that conversation with him, and the reason I agree with you on that is some people reach out to me. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I just owned up to a few on this call, and I'm sure you have made some mistakes in the past too. And yes. I wanted him to realize that, hey buddy, this is a mistake. And he seems like the kind of guy that might actually come out and say, I made this mistake, I'm sorry guys. And if he turns around, he can actually be a great resource for drivers. He's just got to do it the right way, and I believe that he can. But I'll continue to monitor the situation, and I'll do a better job of trying to pin these things right when we notice that they're happening. And I've made a policy, again, if you give me one more minute, I want to talk to the Tryp influencers and the rest of the folks too. I know guys, for example, Kevin, you've made videos about Tryp lied about the fares. You've made videos about, is Tryp a scam? All those videos, in my opinion, I'm the chief technology officer of the company. I came on as a partner. Those videos, in my opinion, they keep us accountable. They keep us honest. They told me our website sucks. They told me we're not doing a good job. What I'd like you guys to do is to share information, not come and fight here. I know you guys are a lot of the Tryp influencers, it's a common misconception that they're being paid by us. They make no money from us. They are independent people who invest their own time and money. So guys, I had a conversation with you guys earlier too. Please be professional. Please be polite, as I know you are when you communicate with us. And if someone comes back to you and says Tryp is a scam or Tryp is a pyramid scheme or a multi-level marketing scheme, it's probably because it looks that way. So let's not give them more ammunition to do that, and let's be polite and professional and answer questions. And that moves us forward. And same with, I know those guys get back a lot of negativity too. If someone says anything negative to you, just respond with something positive, and respond with positive information that's actually valuable. I hope that sets the record straight for everybody too, because we should focus on solving some real problems that drivers are having all over the world. And specifically starting with Florida, not just starting fights and starting drama. So Kevin, I do want to thank you for calling us out and keeping us accountable. And I'm going to continue to support Anybody that comes out and keeps us accountable, as long as they're not being unreasonable. And I think you're a reasonable guy. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having this video call with me right now, I would imagine.
I try to be reasonable. And for the record, I actually have made a couple videos where I've talked about what I like about the concept of Tryp. So it's, I just call it as I see it. It's actually kind of, take comfort in this. Like Tryp is one of the few companies I've actually made videos where it's like, I'm kind of positive about this a little bit. So you can sleep a little good knowing that. Now I'm going to add one more question because someone brought it up and I didn't think to ask it. I don't know if you can actually answer this question, but what is Tryp's policy on firearms for the drivers?
It's a tricky one, man. It's a very tricky one because we tend to be in the area of, we do not want to make regulation that goes against the law. So for example, a lot of people ask, and this is the best way I can explain this. A lot of people ask, if I have a driver's license from Alaska, can I come to Florida and drive? My answer is, if Florida allows you to drive people around in a rideshare company with an Alaska license, then we're not really going to restrict you, because we are not trying to get in the business of making those kinds of policies. But it's hard to do that from a rideshare standpoint because you have liability. So I don't have our answer right now is towards the safer side, where we're going to say we're going to try to do things where weapons are not in the car, but that's not a hard stance right now. We don't have a defined policy. That's where I actually need help of drivers and riders to help craft a policy that they can all live with. And we probably not will all agree, but I want to make that decision together with riders and drivers instead of just force another decision on you like any other company would. That's my approach. That's my answer.
Okay. So I told myself I wouldn't do this. Do you mind if I kind of give my 2 cents on that particular matter?
No, please do. Please do.
Okay. So this comes from someone who does not own a gun and will not have any intention of owning a gun for personal reasons. However, I do believe in the Second Amendment, and I report on stories all the time of drivers and passengers, for that matter, who are attacked. And I feel that if it is your own business, you should decide what the appropriate steps are to protect that business. And that includes a gun that is legally allowed under the law. I think it should be allowed. I'm just going to give you my opinion on that one.
It's a valid point. I don't know if you got to see any of the live streams from the Miami launch event that we had. I actually had 4 videos of drivers getting brutally attacked and 1 video of a driver's tip being stolen. And I wanted to talk about what we're going to do for rider verification there. And this goes to that because I think about this day and night, because when I did that experiment, my fiance at that time went out and drove in the city of Philadelphia. And the question I have to answer is, if I don't feel safe with my fiance, now my wife, going out and driving, how can I put people that are my members of my community, how can I believe that they're safe? So that's the question I try to answer every day, is would I feel comfortable with my wife, my sister, my mother, my father, myself being in that car as a driver or rider? If I can answer that, then I'm probably doing some things right. And that's what I struggle with every day. So I do agree with you. I think driver safety is extremely important, and it begins with rider verification too. But we do have to think about, you can keep a gun in your shop, so why not in your car? Don't know the answer to that because there's legal implications, but we will come to it together. Again, it's not a decision I want to make right now. I probably would want to make that with some driver town halls that we do in each area, and it may be a different rule and regulation in each state and each area we go to.
And obviously that would be local jurisdictions that would probably decide the gun debate each area. The one thing I'm going to just recommend that you don't do, just in case it comes up, I'll give you this advice right now. If it comes up, well, maybe we should notify riders whether or not this particular driver carries a firearm. I would probably recommend you don't do that because, unfortunately, some people would know, and it's nice being transparent, but then people who specifically want to take advantage of a driver would have information that this person does not carry and cannot defend themselves.
Oh, right. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
So I know it didn't quite come
why
up.
These discussions are important. This is exactly why, because you don't think of the other side of the coin. That's really good.
Right. I know that didn't quite come up, but I'm just thinking like, well, if you're going to have these discussions, just kind of keep that in the middle of your mind right there.
Absolutely.
I think it's something that gets overlooked. So
can I take just 30 seconds here? Do you see what just happened right now? This is what my vision for Tryp is. My vision for Tryp is to work with different folks that have an influence like you and drivers in different areas and come to a solution in this manner, instead of us sitting in this meeting room and just coming out and making a decision saying, hey, drivers, deal with this now. That's not what I want to do. I want to build this company with drivers. So we are not a fully formed, completely perfect company yet, and we probably never will be. But I want to make all of those decisions together with drivers. And I am an open book. If you've had some feeling about just talking to me right now, and I will come down to you. If we've screwed something up, we will change it. We will learn. We will talk to you guys, and we will build this together. This company will get built, but only with drivers, and that's something that I want to commit to and make sure that we can make an effort to. Because it'll be really cool if you can do that. Finally, something that matters. Finally, something where you don't have to worry about Google change something on you, and you can't do something because it's so annoying and you had no idea, right? So that's just my 30 seconds.
Oh, thank you. Now I saw Chris Tampa in the chat. She had like a very good question, and I'm surprised I didn't have this question down. We're getting, and I'll ask it because I'm pretty close to the end of my questions. Like one left. She has been assaulted by passengers, and actually a lot of passengers have assaulted Uber drivers. Is Tryp going to have a passenger vetting system, which would certainly be something Uber and Lyft don't do at all?
So one of the pictures that I shared at the Miami launch was in the Philadelphia Uber and Lyft drivers group. There's a picture commonly goes around of a Lyft passenger named Satan, because there's no rider verification. So you can name yourself anything. And in that scenario, if someone assaulted you, what would you tell your insurance company or the police? That Satan assaulted me? Like people would think you're crazy. So what we're trying to do, we actually have a really cool sort of leverage to be able to do that. That with us, every time you take a ride, you get 10 cents. Every time your referral, any person you refer takes a ride, you get 40 cents. And from a KYC standpoint, know your customer standpoint, right? Verification is actually one of the things that is an incentive that governments require for you to be able to pay money out. So what we're thinking is we're going to incentivize riders. We don't have this fully formed yet, but what we're thinking we should do is incentivize riders that if you want to extract any of that money, or if you want to be able to use it for rides, you're going to have to provide your ID and certain forms of verification so we can verify you. And we might give you badges or even perhaps give you some discounts to be a verified rider, because it makes our community safer. That's something, this is exactly the kind of problems I want to solve. And I'm so sorry that this happened. Who was the lady again? It was someone from Tampa?
Her name was Chris.
Chris. So I'm so sorry that happened, but that is the problems that I want to solve together with you guys. I don't want to say here, my experience is 2.5 months. I still go out drive when I can, but there's so much experience. And this is the beauty about building something decentralized and open source, that we want to work together to come up with a solution, a safe area where riders feel safe and drivers feel safe.
Oh, okay, that's good. So basically, if passengers want to get like the rewards, the benefits and stuff, they have to be verified. They just can't be back kid and expect to get those things.
Exactly, precisely. And that's one way. I want to try to go a step further and do verification anyway, but I haven't figured that out as to how we would do that and still get tons of riders in, because sometimes people just don't want to give you information. They don't want your ID to be on some company or any company. People are generally hesitant to give information. So we have to create some psychological incentive structure for them to want to do that.
Okay, sounds good. Now, this might actually be a simple question to answer. Does the poor stock performance of Uber and Lyft worry anyone at Tryp about the future of rideshare?
It's actually rather encouraging, because the whole point of why Bob started this company, Bob McNulty is our CEO, by the way, for those of you who might not know, is he saw an opportunity. There's Uber and Lyft, I never want to bash them, because without Uber and Lyft, I would not have been able to get from the airport to my office right now. I actually took an Uber down here because Tryp is not available. They brought rideshare to the world. Uber does about 15.5 million rides daily at this point. And at their peak, they were worth more than GM, Ford, and Fiat combined. It's a amazingly huge company. But they've created this area, an opportunity of problems that can be solved. For example, the driver safety problems about drivers making enough money, problems about fulfillment. And that is what leads us to come in and say, hey, we'll create something together with this driver base. We'll create something that all the drivers are part of building, not just build it out and say, hey, drivers, deal with it. There's another company that got really big and now you have to deal with it. If we build it together, we can actually create something that is not only profitable, but is long lasting. And I think that's my take on that. Their stock performance actually validates what we're trying to do. We're trying to solve those problems from a business model standpoint, from a standpoint of solving problems and giving value to drivers and riders.
Okay. So someone asked me this question. I thought it was pretty obvious, but for those who don't know, how does Tryp make money?
So we make money in two ways, right? So first of all, there's a lot of confusion regarding why do we charge money up front, okay? Uber and Lyft don't charge you any money to sign up, which is awesome. I'm actually trying to figure out how we do that. We just don't have enough money to pay for everyone's background checks. We got over 72,000 users times the number of background checks, we would not be around, like just like that. So already we have quite a few people in the company that don't take any salary at all because we're a startup, guys. We're a startup trying to deal with giants. But if we do it together with you, do it together with the drivers, we can actually create something meaningful. So how do we make money? We don't make any money from the setup fees. All of that goes into going into your setting up your background check, which we have to do and make sure that you are someone who should be on the platform. Number two, setting up your merchant account. Each driver gets their own merchant account. So when the rider pays you, they're paying directly to you. They're not paying us and we're paying you out. That money goes directly into your account. The second way that we make money from that, from each ride, we take a $1.95 booking fee. That booking fee comes to us, and guess what we do with it? Out of that $1.95, we take 55 cents and put it into a pool. From that 55 cents, 40 cents goes to the person that referred you. That's where the rider rewards come from. 10 cents goes to yourself, and 5 cents goes into a pool where we might give riders offers like, hey, 10% off, 5% off, $3 off, or do marketing and things of that sort. So that's where that comes in. And the final way that we make money is very obvious. We charge a subscription for our platform, which is either 80 bucks a month, roughly 140 a month, or 200 a month. But this is something that's really important. We're not charging that money to anybody right now. The reason being, I'm not confident enough at this point that if I turn on the app in South Florida, that people are going to right away get enough rides to make money. So to answer that, I'm saying I'm going to go get rider demand. And until we have enough rider demand, no one is going to pay that money. So there's not a single driver that's going to be on our platform. You can actually go to our events. And when we announce it in Florida, if you sign up as a driver, you can choose the pay later option. You don't even have to pay the setup fee in South Florida, because I realize a lot of drivers saying, I don't want to pay a setup fee if I don't know if this is going to work. So we chose a pay later option. We paid for background check for over 1,200 drivers right now. That's about almost $100,000+ that we paid out of our own pocket. And we said, you don't have to pay this to us until 10 days after you start driving. Then we said, while we're doing these events and building up ride demand, you don't have to pay this fee either. So we are literally trying to create an environment where we're actually letting drivers try this out. And once we turn the app on 24/7, then we're going to start the counters of when the subscription fee kicks in, because then we know you're going to make enough money to pay for the subscription fee. Just trying to think of fair ways to do this and do it the right way. And hopefully enough people can see that. And if we're doing something wrong, they tell us so we can fix it.
Okay. I think this is going to be the last of 2 questions. Then we're going to wrap it up. But
sure.
Dustin is driving asked a question. So this is his question. This isn't mine, although it's probably worth asking. He says, the referral system is nice, but won't money run out eventually? Will they drop rates eventually?
So I think he's talking about the 40 cents that goes out to each referred rider and the 10 cents. Right. So it's one of those that the way that was created is a self-sustaining program. You don't pay out money until money comes in. So if a ride happens, that $1.95 is paid, and hence the 40 cents goes out, and hence the 10 cents goes out. If a ride doesn't happen, the money doesn't go out. So if from a mathematical standpoint, game theory is applied over it, it's a never-ending system. It funds itself. So that's my answer for that. It doesn't really run out unless there's no rides, which right now, for example, there's not rides happening. So guess what? No one's getting any referral money. If someone's saying they're making a lot of money from referrals, or if they're waving cash around, no one is making tons of money right now. Okay. That only comes in when there's rides happening. That's how we designed the system, so that people are not just making money by selling some product or selling an idea. And I think that's something I'm very upset about and embarrassed about, that we didn't do a good job of taking control of it. And hopefully we can start to do that now, put the right messaging out.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask a question that I know you can't answer this, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask it. It would be brought up. The service has been delayed for months now. Will drivers actually be able to take rides?
Yeah, so this goes back to why I came on board. And now, can you give me 5 minutes to answer this? Is that okay?
You can have 5 minutes to answer this one. It's pretty much the last question.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Okay. When this service has not been delayed for months, it's been delayed for almost a year. We were supposed to go live in December of 2018, then January of 2019, then February. Every week it was like something else, right? There's one of the reasons why Bob and David decided to look for a competent technology leader and a competent team to come on board and audit what's going on with the current technology team. I came on board on 1st of March. I did an audit, and on 12th of March, the 25-person technology team was fired, and it was brought down to 2 people, me and one other project manager who ended up leaving a little bit after. Since then, I've been recreating the entire system and the team to build this to a level that people deserve. I've been bringing my expertise from the companies I've built in the past and the companies that I've worked for in the past. You can search my name, Taha Abbasi, on Google. You'll be able to find more than enough information about what I've done and what I have not. So we are working very hard to get this application out. Now, when will the first drives, when will production drives happen? Our rollout strategy is going to be, that's one of the reasons I'm in Orange County right now. We're going to continue to identify events in Miami, in South Florida, and Fort Lauderdale first. Our plan is to have a 24/7 ride happening sometime within perhaps around end of September is when 24/7 rides could happen. But can that date move? It likely can. But I like to be transparent and upfront and come to you, tell you why it's going to move. If it's going to move, it's because it may not be a good decision for us to start charging drivers then. It may not be a good decision for us to start turning it on for riders and they have to wait 20 minutes to a ride because enough drivers are not gone through the background check process, perhaps, right? So those are the reasons why we would delay it. Otherwise, we want to turn this on yesterday. I just want to make sure we're not messing with people's money and their livelihood. So my answer is we're trying to be transparent. We will always share more information. I'll share on my Facebook Lives. I'll continue to try to come to people like Kevin, the Apptrepreneur, and other folks. And I want you guys to keep us accountable and keep us in check. If you miss a date, I want you, Kevin, to say, hey, tell me why you missed this date. Tell me what's going on. Don't just make an excuse. Tell me what happened exactly instead of just putting up some political spin on it. And I will come up and I will cop up to, hey, this is what went wrong. This is what we're doing about it. Hopefully that clarifies our approach on this.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to pretty much now give some of my final thoughts on this interview because some people have been asking about certain things that weren't addressed, opinions on things. So folks, first of all, I'm going to answer the elephant in the room. I am aware of the CEO Bob McNulty's SEC situation right now. The reason it was not brought up in this interview is because, first of all, Bob's not here to talk about it. It is not relevant to Tryp as far as I can see at the moment. And we here at the Apptrepreneur, which is basically me, believe in innocent until proven guilty. That's his personal thing where it's not relevant here. That's why this was not asked. As for whether or not I am in Tryp's favor or not, it's of course complicated. My position has not changed much. My position is that I really sincerely hope Tryp succeeds. I like a lot of the ideas. Some things I am still concerned about. I will, of course, encourage people to approach it however they see fit. I always recommend approaching any new business with caution, but that's my stance. I'm hoping for them to succeed. As for the millions of questions people have, because I see people here going like, well, now that he said this, why didn't you ask this? Because they are building it, folks. They are building it, and he's admitted many times they don't have all the answers, and this is how things get molded and shaped, is that there's a lot of trial and error. So I am willing to forgive a few missed launches and stuff like that. I once they start charging money, I will start getting a lot more on top of them for things that might go wrong. As it turns out, right now they are not charging money. Therefore, technically, no one is being hurt by this. And if they never launch, they never launch. And if they launch, well, then we can take the next step. I know everyone has a million questions. I think they have a million questions. We're just trying to get some of the confusion cleared up. And I mean, I will, of course, be making future videos on what I feel about some of this, but the information has now been given by Taha. You can kind of decide for yourself whether or not this was satisfying answers. I'm sure he will be reading the chat log after we go off. I'm sure he will be reading the comments. You are always welcome to read the comments below and share them. I believe he will. When he says he will be reading the comments, I believe him to be telling the truth. So those are my final thoughts on the interview. Taha, do you have any final thoughts of your own?
Yeah, I just want to end with thanking you for even bringing me on board. And since you brought up the thing about Bob, I do want to make a comment about that, and then I'll end, because there's no secret. There's an SEC order that came out about Bob. It's all over Google, right? There's also an SEC order about Elon Musk. There's also an SEC order about the CFO of Apple. I'm not saying one is different from the other, but everybody sees the order. Nobody actually dives in and sees what the result was. There was a settlement. What is the SEC there for? They're there to check and balance when something goes wrong. And we pay taxes to these organizations to be able to continuously check organizations when they make an adjustment, say, hey, you're doing this wrong, go fix it, and here's a fine for you to make sure that this is washed out for the next time. I hope that if I make a mistake in the future, these organizations that we pay so much tax money for them to do their job, that they check me and say, hey, don't do this wrong, or this is something you might have made a mistake on, and here's a fine or here's a settlement. If the answer to the SEC investigation, you go look it up on Google, all of them had no admission of guilt. He's not in prison. He's here in a meeting room right now. He paid, I think there was a fine that he had to pay, and then it was settled in the sense of, hey, this is what we want you to adjust. Same with Elon Musk when he did the thing about $425 to buy the company private on Twitter. They said, hey, here's a fine. You have to not be a CEO for so many days. He made his title nobody at Tesla. He made his official title nobody at Tesla for a couple of days. But SEC is there for a reason, and they should do their job. So that's my answer to that. It's not a secret, guys. If you have questions, you can ask. We're open book. We're not perfect. We made mistakes. Have you not made a mistake ever in the past? Some of them we made where, oh, we should have known better. Some of them we had no idea, and we continue to try to fix it. Our intention is to bring the focus back to the drivers and make sure that we are creating something meaningful and worthwhile. And in that, I want to thank you, Kevin. And I want to thank all the Uber Troopers and all, in fact, the folks from our Tryp team and the influencers as well. But I want to encourage all of you guys to work together and not fight each other. If someone has a question or if someone has a different opinion, let it be. Don't try to push one person's opinion on the other. Have a civil conversation, answer questions, and I welcome your criticism and your advice and your feedback, because that's what we want to do. We want to take that and make our applications and our company better. So thank you so much for giving me this chance to come out and talk to you.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. And once again, everyone in the comments, we have the whole video should be up after we end this. Chances are, if you had a question that wasn't answered, it might have been early in the interview. If your question was not answered, again, you can comment below. I believe Taha, when he says he will be reading the comments, and I will continue to make videos, both positive and critical of Tryp. So that's not going to change. Just because we've had him on here doesn't mean that I'm not going to be critical. But I will give Tryp this much credit. How many times do I complain about Uber, Lyft, Amazon, Apple, Google? No one ever reaches out to me. So whenever someone from one of these companies wants to reach out and talk about these things, I will always have them on. So thank you for being here. And for everyone else, you know the drill. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, blame responsibly. Thanks once again to Taha for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Now how do we end this? I think we do. No, oops. I don't think that's